last night. Something we haven't seen from him all the time. He's been a little edgy at times in public, but he was out partying with Red for her birthday. Here in LA, she had a party, and Justin was on the guest list. Seemed real happy. And in fact,
coming out. It's so funny what's happening with Diddy because this was inevitable.
The entertainment world is buzzing with whispers, revelations, and the kind of allegations that make even the most seasoned insiders gasp. It's a web of secrets that has been spun over decades, and at the center of it all stands Sean Diddy. Comem's a name synonymous with power, influence, and controversy. But now the curtain is being pulled back, and what's being exposed could shake the very foundations of the music industry. This isn't just about one man, it's about a culture, a system, and the lives caught in its grip. And somehow, Justin Bieber, once the wide-eyed teen idol with a voice that captured the world, has found himself entangled in this twisted narrative.
It was just an escape for me. I was just young, like everybody in the industry and people in the world who experiment and do.
Let's rewind to the early days of Bieber's meteoric rise. He was just 13 years old when he went from a small-town Canadian kid posting songs on YouTube to a global phenomenon behind the scenes. Though his journey was anything but wholesome, Usher, Diddy, and a cadre of industry executives saw something in Bieber, not just his talent, but his potential to be molded, controlled, and exploited. While the world marveled at his innocent charm and sky-high vocals, those in the know were already whispering about the darker forces at play. Moved to New York City, and I lived with Sean Puffy for a year. That's the crazy thing. Diddy, of course, was no stranger to cultivating young talent. He'd done it before with names like Usher, who lived under his wing as a teenager. Usher himself has spoken about those days with a mix of awe and discomfort, describing a wild environment that seemed more like a frat house than a mentorship, when Usher handed over Bieber to Diddy, claiming he'd look after him. What exactly did that mean? And why after all these years? Does Bieber avoid even mentioning Diddy's name in interviews? The silence is deafening, and it's fueling speculation about what really happened during those formative years. The rumors about Diddy's infamous parties aren't new. Industry insiders have long shared stories. Some whispered, some shouted about gatherings that were as exclusive as they were unhinged. These weren't your typical Hollywood soirees. They were events cloaked in secrecy where cameras weren't allowed and attendees were sworn to silence for years. These parties were dismissed as nothing more than tabloid fodder. But now, with allegations mounting, the puzzle pieces are beginning to form a disturbing picture.
I moved to New York City, and I lived with Sean Puffy Combs for a year.
That's the crazy.
Bieber. He was there not just as a guest, but as someone who was by all accounts under Diddy's protection. A newly resurfaced clip shows Diddy openly bragging about spending 48 hours with a 15-year-old Bieber with a grin that sends chills down spines. In hindsight, he's living every 15-year-old's dream, Diddy said at the time, but what did that dream entail? Why was a teenager being whisked away for days at a time by a man who had built his fortune on the backs of young talent, and why in the years since has Bieber seemed so keen to distance himself from his past, cutting ties with former mentors and refusing to speak about those early days? What's even more unsettling is the resurfacing of old interviews and public appearances where Bieber seemed visibly uncomfortable around Diddy. In one clip, Diddy presses him about why he hasn't been returning his calls, his tone dripping with an odd mix of frustration and entitlement. Bieber, barely able to make eye contact, brushes it off with nervous laughter. It's the kind of interaction that at the time might have seemed innocuous, but now with everything we know, it feels loaded with meaning.
What'd they do to him? Because there's a lot of speculation out there, but nobody, I've heard things, but what did they really do to him?
Then there's the music video for Bieber's song Yummy, which has been dissected by fans and conspiracy theorists alike. The video is a surreal, candy-colored fever dream with scenes that many believe are laden with symbolic references to his experiences in the industry. One particularly striking moment shows Bieber at a lavish banquet surrounded by grotesque, indulgent characters who seem oblivious to his presence. Was this his way of speaking out, of hinting at the things he couldn't say outright? If so, it's a cry for help that went unnoticed by most. Of course, the allegations against Diddy go far beyond his interactions with Bieber. The stories coming to light paint a picture of a man who wielded his power like a weapon, using his status to manipulate and control those around him. And while many of these accounts are still unproven in a court of law, the sheer volume of accusations is impossible to ignore, from former collaborators to ex-girlfriends. The list of people stepping forward is growing by the day. Each new revelation adds another layer to a scandal that feels both shocking and, in a way, inevitable. And we are getting word that these accusers could soon testify in front of a grand jury in New York, and that one accuser is from Detroit. The music industry has long been a breeding ground for exploitation, with its insatiable appetite for fame and fortune overshadowing the human cost. But what's happening now feels different. This isn't just a scandal, it's a reckoning, and at the heart of it all is Bieber, who has spent years trying to reconcile the boy he was with the man he's become. He's opened up about his struggles with mental health, his battles with addiction, and his desire to leave his past behind, but can he ever truly move on without confronting the ghosts of his early career? The whisperers have turned into roars, and the questions are piling up. What did Bieber endure during his time under Diddy's wing? How much did Usher know, and why did he hand Bieber over in the first place? And most importantly, who else was complicit in creating an environment where these alleged abuses could occur? As the trial looms, the world is watching, waiting for answers. And while the truth may eventually come to light, one thing is certain: the music industry will never be the same.
We'll take Justin Bieber. A grown man take Justin Bieber when he was young to a vacation, a romantic vacation, showing pictures.
And it gets darker. Because if you thought this story was just about power dynamics and manipulation, think again. The legal implications creeping out of this cesspool of allegations are as tangled as the relationships that built Diddy's empire. What we're looking at now isn't just a scandal, it's the potential unraveling of a carefully curated legacy. And make no mistake, every single thread of this case is pulling at the tightly wound fabric of Hollywood's elite. Let's start with the subpoenas. Justin Bieber has reportedly been summoned to testify, and the implications of that alone are staggering. Bieber, who has spent the better part of a decade dodging questions about his connection to Diddy, may now be forced to speak under oath. And here's the kicker. There's chatter that video evidence might exist. Yes, video evidence allegedly recorded at one of Diddy's infamous gatherings. These tapes are said to feature a roster of celebrities in situations that could at best be described as compromising. At worst, well, let's just say it would make headlines for years. And if Bieber is on those tapes, even as a bystander, his silence, up until now, suddenly makes a lot more sense.
And we are getting word that that these accusers could soon testify in front of a grand jury in New York, and that one accuser is from Detroit.
But here's where it gets even murkier. Diddy's legal team is pulling out every trick in the book, challenging the very foundation of the investigation. They're arguing that the search warrants used to raid his properties were overreaching, unconstitutional, and based on unreliable testimony. This isn't some slapdash defense strategy. It's a full-scale assault on the credibility of the case itself. If the court sides with Diddy's team, critical evidence could be thrown out, potentially crippling the prosecution before the trial even begins, and that's exactly what they're baking on. Meanwhile, Cassie's role in all of this cannot be overstated. Her decision to testify, and to do so publicly, has sent shockwaves through the industry. This isn't just an ex-girlfriend airing grievances. This is someone who lived inside Diddy's world for more than a decade. Someone who saw things that most people couldn't even imagine. Her allegations, which include everything from coercion to physical harm, paint a picture of a man who operated with impunity, believing himself untouchable. And now she's stepping into the spotlight, prepared to recount her story in excruciating detail. The prosecution sees her as a linchpin, a credible witness whose testimony could tie together desperate threads of evidence into a coherent, damning narrative. But make no mistake, this is far from a slam dunk. Diddy's lawyers will go after her with everything they've got, questioning her motives, her credibility, and her timing. It's going to be a brutal public showdown.
This investigation is ongoing, and I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do it quickly.
And then there's the alleged footage. The prosecution has reportedly secured a treasure trove of video recordings seized during the raids on Diddy's properties. If these tapes are as incriminating as insiders claim, they could be the nail in the coffin. Not just for Diddy, but for everyone involved. We're talking about a who's who of Hollywood and the music industry, people who were allegedly present at these gatherings, people who may have turned a blind eye, or worse, the mere existence of these tapes has already sparked a frenzy behind the scenes. According to sources, there's a bidding war happening in the shadows, with certain parties desperate to either bury the footage or control how it's released. And let's not forget, this isn't just about protecting reputations for some, it's about avoiding criminal charges.